Hello, welcome to Experiments in Poetry. This is your host, Wendy. Today I would like to talk to you about the structure of the poem White Noise in a segment I like to call the technical. Now, I meant to cover some of this in the last segment, the story behind um, White Noise, but it's kind of serendipitous that I left it out. Probably did it unconsciously because I was thinking that maybe a lot of people aren't interested in how you structure or format or write a poem. I was thinking maybe they were just more interested in reading the poem and then getting some insight into, why the inspiration behind it. However, after thinking about it a couple of days, I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I think that maybe it would be beneficial, especially since this poem is so structured. It might help a lot of new writers learn how to write and also might give inspiration or ideas to people who are already writing. So let's get into it. So these are the technical aspects of my poem, White Noise. So when I first get the idea to write a poem, one of the first things that you might think about is what style of poetry do you want to write in? Um, right now, the most popular style is more like free verse, but still keeping some meter and rhythm to it. Some people just write in blank verse or prose verse. Those seems to be the styles that um, are popular right now. However, I was writing I was writing a poem about a musician. So I wanted it to be melodic and musical. And not only was I writing a song about a musician, um, it's a musician who I feel is very structured when they create. And what I mean by structured is he, upon listening to some interviews on several occasions, has mentioned different things that he will do to create barriers or restrictions on himself when he's writing and producing his music. So, for instance, in his first band, the White Stripes, he purposely was like, I'm just going to create in the framework of a guitar, drums, and vocals. And everything I'm going to write is only going to be doing or using those three things. Or he might have a new pedal or something that he created a new sound and I'm only going to use this. So with that in mind, I really felt like I needed to write the poem using a formal poetry format because they're very restrictive and you have to create in a very narrow space. So since it's kind of well known that Jack likes the number 3, he named his record company Third Man Records. His solo logo is 3 vertical lines. He's been a member of 3 different bands. And he even gave interviews talking about, how magical he thinks the number 3 is. I can't quote him verbatim, but it was an interview he gave in The Guardian where he talked about when he first kind of became obsessed or fell in love with or realized how magical the number 3 was. And he was talking about when he had a job as an upholsterer and that he realized that 3 was the bare minimum of staples he needed to keep the fabric together. Um, and, you need 3 legs to hold up a chair or a table, or the time is kept in 3, past, present, future, hours, minutes, seconds. There are 3 primary colors that make up all the colors. Then he's also Catholic. So, there's the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and also mind, body, and soul. When he was in the White Stripes, everything had to be colored red, black, or white whenever they went on stage and all their instruments. And for his solo career, he is using a blue, black, and white type of format. So 3 seems pretty important to him. So the problem with that is, what am I going to pick? So what style, what format am I going to pick? So I started with the base of using a Shakespearean sonnet. And I chose this because it's a formal poem. It has end rhymes. It has a melodic melody to it. And it's very beautiful. I mean, Shakespeare, he's the bard. He's probably the greatest English writing poet ever. So why not? And so, but the thing is, this is experiments in poetry. I'm not, I can't do Shakespeare better than Shakespeare. And Shakespeare's already been tried and done. So I'm going to do an ode to Jack White. And I'm going to start with a Shakespearean sonnet. And I'm going to put it in my little blender. And I'm going to spike some Jack White into it. And I'm going to grind it up and see what comes out. So I like the Shakespearean sonnet. It does have 3 stanzas. So there you go. There's the 3. And the 3 stanzas each have 4 lines. So 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 12. So 1 plus 2 is 3. So there you go. There's the number 3 again. 3 stanzas, 4 lines, add them up. You get the number 3. It does have a couplet, an extra 2 lines at the bottom that just kind of summarize the poem. So I like that aspect of it, so I kept the number of lines. I liked the fact that there were end rhymes, but instead of using an A, B, C, D, E, F, G format, I switched to an A, B, C, D, E, and et cetera format. Because I just thought it sounded more musical that way. The next thing I changed is sonnets are typically written in what's known as poetry as Iambic Pentameter. And that is simply meaning that you have a foot, which consists of an unaccented syllable with a stressed syllable, or unstressed versus stressed syllable, and you repeat that 5 times. So it's 10 and then divide it by 2. That makes sense. Am I making sense? I don't know. So anyway, so you get 5 feet consisting of 2 syllables, right? So it's 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. But 2 is not going to work here because I just got done telling you the obsession of the number 3. So I changed my meters. Instead of having 10 basically syllables to 9. So I tried to keep a meter of a trimeter throughout the whole entire poem. And I also used what they call a dactylic. So it's written in dactylic trimeter. So that basically means I'm using 3 syllables followed by repeated 3 times. So each line, almost every single line, is just 9 syllables long, or 9 breaths, if you will. I don't know how to describe it. So though some lines have, a spondee or a lamb at the end for emphasis on certain words and themes, or just for the sound of it. And that's okay. Um, so so I mentioned that this is dactylic. And so that's also a change from the iambic, because an iambic is an unstressed followed by a stressed. And now that makes it sound very beautiful, very soft, very, romantic and flowery. But Jack is a rock star, and not only that, he's kind of known for garage band type of music. So you don't usually, you know, associate flowery and soft with shredding an electric guitar. So therefore, instead of using the unstressed followed by the stressed, um, the dactylic meter is going to be stressed. It starts off with a stressed syllable followed by two unstressed. So you could see it in the line, let's say the first lines of the song. It's listen, and then there's a comma, which is a caesura, which counts as a beep. Listen, caesura, and then carefully. So the also the other thing about that, so it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So the one is stronger, and then 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and that is the rhythm of the poem. Interesting thing about that is that that kind of reminds me of a band getting ready to start a particular song. I mean, we've all seen it, musicians on stage, in order to get everybody to, if you're going to have multiple people or maybe you're sound checking or whatever, it's kind of like this stereotypical thing of 1, 2, 3. And so I thought that was interesting there too. Um, so, like when you go down to the second line, it's here, white noise, set your mind, and then free. So, here, white noise, set your mind free. And so, free is a little what they call a lamb. So, that's making the line being an equal 10. Um, And so the lamb at the end is free, which is kind of what the point, if you listen to the previous episode where I went into length about the inspiration, and it was all about clearing your mind, of whatever is on it by using meditation techniques. And so if you see that lamb that's taking off the line is free, and the next line, there's a spondee, which is high peaks. When you go down to the next line, it's he speaks. So if you look at the lambs that are coming off all the lines in the poem, um, it's free and Eve, right? I'm meditating and you have free Eve. And then if you look at all the spondees that are coming off all the lines in the poem, it's going to be he speaks, high peaks, find, and divine. So it's like I find how he speaks in high peaks divine. So those are kind of some hidden gems within the structure of the poem that kind of, really accentuate the fact that this is something that was constructed, every single word and every single placement, the rhythm of it and everything was in consideration to my I am a scientist, so to my specimen, to to my subject of my experiment. I hope it didn't hurt him too much. But yeah, that's it. I mean, let me think about what some other features are. On a grand level, if you look overall, one other feature might be um, that when you look at the overall structure of the poem, is the fact that I structured it. So Jack White once said something about when he picked the color scheme for the White Stripes, where they were basically coming out wearing basically all red and white, and they had the little peppermint candies everywhere. That he thought that a lot of people would be put off by that, and then he was like, kind of like, good, right? Because I only want the people who can see past the superficialness of what we look like on the outside and get down into the details, or if you can say, into the meaning, into the what we're doing in our music. And um so in a way, when you look at the whole entire poem, you kind of have to be in the literature world. And I think I said it in the beginning, that to write a formal poem is a very odd thing to do. It's not really in style nowadays. And in fact, probably if I was to submit this to journals, which I did, it's funny that I'm saying this because I did, and it did get accepted, but I did send it to a specific journal, Measure, a review of formal poetry. And so it's a specific journal for formal poetry. But if I sent it somewhere else, there is no way that it would get accepted, because 99% of the time, the editor would be like, ew, she used N rhymes, ugh, and just throw it away. And just because I have an AA, BB, CC, DD, EE, FF, GG rhyme scheme, they wouldn't even bother reading it. They would just be so disgusted by it that they would just put it to the side. And it's kind of funny, but if you look around online and you see what editors are saying, it's little things like that, and they just have a peeve about it and they won't even bother reading it. But like I just said, there were many reasons why my poem was structured the way it was. And if you don't bother reading it, then you're not going to understand that. Which brings me to my final thing, which I don't know if it's silly or not, but it's just the final note that Jack, in general, he really doesn't explain his songs, and that's okay. Like, no one has to, right? I'm here explaining my work, but I have a goal in mind. I'm doing it for the greater good. I'm trying to get more people interested that might not be interested, trying to make poetry more accessible. But Jack is kind of interesting because I rarely ever heard him say in detail, you know, what his lyrics meant, other than to say something like, well, I wanted to write a James Bond song, when he was talking about Seven Nation Army, or, like about his new album, well, not his newest album, but the album before. uh, He was like, oh, it's like backstabbing, back alley stabbing type of music, but he never really, would be like, I wrote this song about a car accident I was in 5 years ago or something. Like, he never really does that. And I think it's because um he said, I think it was in a Dan Rather interview, 60 Minutes, several years ago, where he was just like, you know when he creates something and lets it go, it just kind of like goes into the world, and um it becomes kind of the people's who are listening to it song. And so he's more interested maybe in how that's affecting the people and how they interpret it. Or maybe the thing isn't that he's more interested. Maybe he thinks it's more important in general for people to make up their own minds about what the music is. Or he could just be really private and doesn't want to talk about it. But, I found it interesting because to link all these concepts I've been talking about for the last couple minutes, it kind of reminds me of um, a Bible verse. So remember, I was saying that, you know, the he chose the kind of campy color scheme for the white stripes because he wanted people to look deeper. So he might not kind of explain what he's meaning or what he's doing in a particular song because he wants to know, do you actually get me? Do you understand? Maybe you don't understand. So the Bible verse that I'm thinking of is um, Matthew 13:11 through 13. So it goes something like this. So Jesus was asked, like, why do you talk in parables? Like, like, why can't you just like say what you mean and everything has to be kind of like riddles, right? That's what a parable is. Not even like a riddle, but just, he'll talk about sowing seeds and farming or something like this and not directly state what it is he wants to state. And so, and it's for learning purposes, right? So he's teaching a lesson. So in this verse, I think I have part of it written down. So Jesus replied, because they haven't received the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but you have. For those who have will receive more and they will have more than enough. But for those who don't have, even the little they have will be taken away from them. This is why I speak in parables. Although they see, they don't really see. And although they hear, they don't really hear or understand. And so I think this poem that I created for him works in the same way to kind of most people who, or the high profile poets of today, or have high positions in literature, is that they wouldn't even bother looking deeper into it because of some superficial nature, such as end rhyme scheming. And so there, I feel like, oh, wait, well, you missed out, right? Not to brag or anything, but um, a couple other features of the poem. I said in the beginning, and these are very small features, but they have a lot of meaning. So I told you that Jack likes the number 3, and there are 3 stanzas, but each quadrant, it's a quadrant, right? I mean, it has 4 lines to each stanza. So I didn't really like that. So this is something else that I changed. I kept the 4 lines, but the first 3 lines are written in that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, that dactylic trimeter. But the final 4th line, in order to kind of like set it as something different so that it still can say these 3 are consistent, but this one line is something different. And so what I did for the final line is I reversed the stress. So it was 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that's called an anapestic foot. So the last line of every stanza, or even the final line of the couplet, is written in the reverse order, in an anapestic foot. And the reason why stylistically this is important is because it sets up those first 3 lines as still 3. But also, since I'm talking about music and the way sound travels, it kind of reminds me of like a reverb. So it's kind of like an echo, right? It goes in, it's like the first three lines were sent, and then that last line is kind of like it went into you and it's coming back in the same direction it came from. And so every line ends with a reverb, if you will. I'm sorry, every stanza ends with a reverb. And that also goes back to what he was saying in the interview about how, yeah, it just goes out, I send it out. And also, I think one of his logos for his record company is kind of like a radio tower with um, what looks like lightning bolts, which is probably like, music frequencies coming off of it. And so, he sends these vibrations out, these sound waves out, and they come in contact with the people. And then that is kind of what comes off on the end of each stanza in this poem. Uh, and I think that just about sums up. I'm sure there are more gems in there, but I think this is a lot. Um, I hope you enjoyed hearing about all the things that I've included in the creation of this poem, just into the structure part of it that I felt were characteristics that are uniquely Jack White. Thank you. Bye bye.